So, mixing the kick drum. It's a big subject, I know, because you guys always ask me about that. Today I'm going to talk to you about different types of kick drums and how you should approach them. From acoustic to hip-hop to electronic. I'm going to give you some good tricks to make your kick drum sound really nice. Welcome back to the Thomann studio and recording channel. My name is Claudio. I'm a music producer, lifelong music producer. I run this beautiful studios here in central London called Dr. Mix. And if you are interested in mixing, mastering, production, you should definitely subscribe to this channel and also hit that bell notification button so that you are notified anytime we release something new. So having said all that, let's dive into kick drums. So, my colleagues and I on this channel have been talking about kick drums before. I've spoken about compression as well. I'm going to leave a few links in the description, but today's video is going to be more about ways of thinking about kick drum and what you should know with different styles. So, here I've got a selection of kick drums. It's pretty, isn't it? And it's colorful as well. So, let me show you the Acoustic Kick. Right? Now this is a pretty straightforward kick drum. It's an acoustic kick drum and it works on rock, it works on pop, it works on acoustic music. Of course it depends on a few elements, like how hard you hit it, right? Right now it's being hit quite medium. This is a great dynamic range for recording because, of course, when you are recording, you want to make sure that the sound is balanced in itself to begin with. And then you basically go on and make sure that all of your frequencies are in a correct balance so that you have a little bit of the attack, you have a little bit of the body of the kick, but also a little bit of the bottom end, so that it moves the air and it makes the music feels like it's pulsating. Correct? So I'll show you right here what are the frequencies that you want to look at. So the low end obviously carries a lot of the energy. So if you push it up, immediately, well, you can easily overload, but immediately you get a lot of that low-end credibility. Because don't forget, if a kick drum doesn't have enough low end, it won't be believable. It will make your mix sound thin and a bit silly. So you want to know that basically whatever happens below the 100 hertz, yeah, that is the credibility of your kick drum. Then you have the mids. Now the mids, we will consider that to be around the 1000 area. Yeah. Anywhere between, 1000 and 2000. It's like basically the presence of your kick drum. And, if you feel that the kick drum is too quiet, sometimes you can just push the mids and you obtain more volume, more loudness, more perceived loudness from the kick drum, than having to turn it up altogether. All right? So sometimes kick drums can be a bit boxy, so around here, this area, the 200, 300, can be a bit boxy. So in that case, you want to just maybe narrow the EQ a bit and cut it there. You see? This kick has a little bit of it, as you can see right there. So otherwise, there is the top end, which of course gives you, great intelligibility of the kick drum, and it gives you a lot of detail. But you also want to be very careful with the top end because it can become a little bit too aggressive, and you might not need that. So, and in general, I say that, mixing the kick drum is all about balance. You want to make sure that you can always hear the kick drum and it's consistently at the same level. So, having said that, let's move on to metal kicks. So, metal kicks are very much about the top end instead. Let's listen to one. For example, this one. This is not particularly treated, the kick 2. But you see, completely different attitude. On a metal kick drum, the top end is very important, and you do want to overprocess it a little bit because it's gonna have to cut through a very busy mix, you know, especially if it's like speed metal where you have that thing, and that has to cut through a wall of guitars and bass. And so when it's processed, it should sound something like this. See? Unprocessed and processed. You know, especially with this type of music, sometimes it's just not about the pulsation from below, it's more about the subdivision of the rhythm. It's the bass along with the guitars that provides that sort of warm, bassy, you know, wall of sound attitude. So there is not much space for the low end of the kick drum in most metal music. I mean, of course, these are not rules that are set in stones and you're welcome to break them. Each genre has its own unspoken rules for mixing, and metal music is definitely one of those styles. So a great trick to mix metal kicks is to use Trigger by Slate Digital. Steven Slate is a genius and he has an incredible collection of kick drums, and since I can ever remember, all metal music mixers have used Trigger on their tracks to reinforce the kick drum with a sample. The sample on that library are perfect to do this, and 90% of metal mixers use that very plugin. I'm gonna leave a link in the description for that, don't worry. Next, we talk about hip-hop kicks. Now with hip-hop, we're talking about a completely different game, right? So let's check out this vinyl kick right here. So hip-hop kicks are supposed to be nice and round, to fill the space, to have a texture. In this case, we have, you know, a little bit of vinyl noise to it, which, you know, it's all conducive to the correct sound when you're talking about hip-hop. Now, the one thing that you want to make sure is that your bass does not fight the low end of the kick. So in order to do this, my suggestion is always make a decision, decide if it is going to be the kick that drives the very low end, like in this case, or if you want to filter it out and let the bass take that role. So of course there is a lot of energy in the low end, and if both the kick and the bass are fighting for those 50 Hertz, 80 Hertz, 60 Hertz, then your mix is gonna sound muddy, it's gonna be harder for you to get a good clear low end from that mix. So I suggest to filter out whoever you don't want to be driving that low end. If you want to take a decision in between, you could probably compress down the bass whenever the kick hits, so that basically the bass goes out of the way whenever the kick is ready to express its own bassness. So these are pretty typical tricks for mixing the kick drum, but they are especially relevant in hip hop. Now, the natural segue here is the 808 kick. Now, the 808 kick is vastly used everywhere. Hip hop, of course, all the time, and but also obviously in dance music, techno, house, and of course EDM. The 808 type of kick is omnipresent. 808 specifically right here, let's listen to it. This one is pretty cool, it's pretty short, right? See, you can see it. And this is the thing, with the 808, it's a synthesizer, so you can choose how long the decay is. You can choose how loud this attacky part of the sound is. Check out. You know, this has a lot of that attack. And, you know, this is true for any 808, whether it's a VST or if it's the real thing or maybe an 808 clone, you have control over the tone, both in terms of low end, length of the low end, pitch, and also amount of attack. So my suggestion is not to try and change an 808. Just try and play a good 808 instead. Because, you know, if you don't have enough low end, you can just use the synthesizer inside the 808 to get more low end. You see what I mean? So in the ideal case scenario, you would not have to mix the kick on an 808 because you can mix the entire thing around it, right? So a good 808 kick doesn't need any treatment whatsoever, usually. But then it's also a case where, you know, people use samples of the 808, so not all samples are created equal. Some are good, some are not. So rather than trying to make adjustments to the kick drum in terms of equalization and compression and things like that, I suggest that you try a different sample. And then you can use the usual techniques, compression, parallel compression, EQ, to just dial in the exact right amount. Next, we have a long 808 kick. And this is a specifically interesting one because, check out. There's nothing more pleasurable than that. Nice long 808 kick. So this type of kick also covers for the bass itself because it's an actual note. In fact, some artists like to sample this long 808s and they play it as a bass in the track so that you basically have kick and bass in one go. This is obviously easier to mix because you only have one thing to think about. And in general, you just want to make sure that it stays at a consistent level because, you know, low end can be all over the place, especially with, you know, old synthesizers. But if you're using, you know, a sample and you have the situation under control, then probably you need to make very little about a long 808 kick. And otherwise, my final and closing thoughts on mixing the kick is that everything is about the balance. You know, it has to make sense in terms of, you know, how much kick you have, how much snare you have, how much hi-hat you have, and those three things, do they roll together nicely? And then along with the music, do they sustain the music? Do they give you that pulsation? Does the kick drum give you that sense of continuity throughout the song? Then that's the kind of question you want to ask yourself. And otherwise, inspiration is always number one. Hard work is always number two. And in the meantime, I hope that you're doing great. If you have any questions, please leave a comment here below in the comment section and I'll try to answer that. Otherwise, I hope you're doing super well and keeping on making great music. I'll see you later. Bye.